I am delighted to, I've only known Donald for a couple of years now, but I got to know him from going over going over to the Greensboro chapter meetings. Donald Arendt, our speaker for this evening, is a graduate of NC State, has a degree in civil engineering, is a professional engineer, has spent the last few decades working with not only his employer, the North Carolina Railroad, which, by the way, is a real railroad, not a paper railroad, as well as Norfolk Southern, Amtrak, NCDOT, CSX, and you can probably throw some other folks in there too.
Yep.
But I have very much enjoyed getting to know him. He has gone ahead and officially joined the organization this evening, so I am happy to have him in the organization. He lives in Whitsett, so David, you now have a another Whitsett person to
A fellow Whitsetian?
Whitsetian, yes. Okay, better Whitsetian than Whitless, right?
That's right.
Okay, good. So anyway, we're delighted to have you here. This is going to be a great presentation, and I'm glad you all took the time to come and see it. And I think we are all going to learn a bunch of stuff and maybe some surprises. So, thank you, Donald.
Dutch, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. I've been to a few meetings before, and I've really enjoyed that. So I'm surprised y'all haven't, just didn't let me join. I mean, that you actually let me join. But no, I feel like, I don't know, preaching to the choir maybe, speaking to the Company Shops Railroad Club and the North Carolina Railroad, and I'm going to talk about the history of the North Carolina Railroad a little bit at first. So I don't know, y'all may know all this.
Please talk about it. Don't assume we don't know anything.
Okay, no, that's great, because I've got some notes here I'm going to reference at first, but then I'm going to get into, I've got a few slides. I don't have a whole lot of slides, not a lot of pictures, so, but I do have, I wanted to talk tonight and focus on, from an engineering perspective, where we are going, North Carolina Railroad is going as far as infrastructure investment and development, further development of our railroad corridor. We're excited. This is a milestone, in my opinion, a milestone time in our history where we'll look back and say, in the 2020s is when we pivoted and we started making more investment in the corridor so that we could support passenger and freight investments for the state of North Carolina. It's just a really exciting time to be in the rail industry, and especially in North Carolina. So let me just jump in with some numbers here. Chartered in 1849, North Carolina Railroad, January 27th, 1849, actually, the state legislature chartered us as a railroad. We were funded by the state of North Carolina and private investors at the time. So it was desired to be a 50-50 split. I think the state actually ended up spending more money than the private investors, but the railroad was built in the 1850s, about $3 million initial investment to build it, and then came back for another $1 million. So a change order, what is a construction project without a change order? So so about $4 million investment. Can you imagine that? Just $4 million in about 5 years.
It was one switch now, isn't it?
That's about right. That's exactly right. I mean, we're building a siding down in Goldsboro now, and it's about twice that to make that investment on projects. I mean, we spent, well, I'll get into more details later. But 1856, the line was completed. We were chartered to build a line from Goldsboro, North Carolina to Charlotte, and it needed to pass through the state capital of Raleigh, and then the line was surveyed, and we came over toward this direction through Burlington, which didn't exist at the time, and to Greensboro, and then turn south, and it was supposed to it had to go through Salisbury and then to Charlotte. So 223 miles initially in the 1850s. Burlington is significant. Company shops, this is the part I feel like I'm talking to the choir. Burlington was not Burlington at the time, it was company shops. This location in Alamance County was the halfway point, generally speaking, so this is a nice flat spot in Alamance County, became the maintenance facility for the North Carolina Railroad, known as Company Shops, and that was the name of the town. Town built up around the maintenance facility and a big hotel, all the housing, it was North Carolina Railroad. So in 1871, our board of directors opted to lease our line operations and maintenance to the Richmond and Danville Railroad. So that's when North Carolina Railroad really kind of went under the radar, and we became an owner, but not an operator or maintainer. So, and at that time, company shops, all the maintenance went to Richmond. So just up and disappeared. That was a 30-year lease. So in the early 1890s, financial troubles came, and Richmond and Danville declared bankruptcy, and out of that came the Southern Railway in 1894. So the Southern Railway was a larger railroad, a bunch of bankrupt railroads put together, and so in 1894, the Southern Railway was formed, and in 1895, the North Carolina Railroad and the Southern Railway struck a 99-year lease. So that was in the middle 1890s. So 1982 was probably the next significant thing. That's when Norfolk and Western and Southern merged and became Norfolk Southern. So our 99-year lease was now with Norfolk Southern. I don't know the details of how that changed, and I think we're getting ready to deal with that again, of a name change of the railroad that operates and maintains our railroad. Some kind of rumor, something coming up. Anyway, so that continued.
You like the color yellow?
I love the color yellow. Yellow and gray, I love. So in the 99-year lease, after Norfolk Southern, Southern and Norfolk and Western merged, then in 1994 the 99-year lease was up, and everybody was anticipating this coming, the big time in our history. And so at that point, it took, well, I skipped a year. 1989 was a significant year for us as well, because in '89 we actually merged, the North Carolina Railroad merged with the ANNC, or the Atlantic and North Carolina Railroad. And so at that point we grew from 223 miles to 317 miles. So today the North Carolina Railroad is 317 miles long. Morehead City, we're right at the port of Morehead City all the way to Charlotte. And so Norfolk Southern operates the entire 317 miles by agreement. And that's when it get into the 1994 milestone. It took 5 years to come up with a new agreement after the 99-year agreement expired. And during that 5-year period, that was probably the last significant time, in my opinion, when things really changed. In that 5-year period, all the private investors were bought out. So the state of North Carolina bought all the stock in North Carolina Railroad, and we are now wholly owned by the state of North Carolina. There's confusion there because some folks think that we're a state agency. We work with NCDOT Rail Division, we work with Norfolk Southern, we work with other railroads, but we're not a state agency. We're a Class 3 short line railroad. And the only way, and I don't know, I guess it's not that it matters what other people think. We have an agreement with Norfolk Southern. They operate and maintain our railroad. And as a railroad employee, I actually pay into railroad retirement. So that to me is the litmus test that we're a railroad. So, but that is also really a part of what I want to talk about tonight is the excitement that's built over the past 30 years. We've set ourselves up to make investments in our infrastructure, and there have been a number of programs. The Rail Division with NCDOT has been a great partner, a great supporter of investments in our corridor, and what I'm going to talk about tonight is a good example of that. But 2 of those programs in the past 30 years basically are good examples as well. First of all, there was NCRP, and we love to talk in those terms. NCRP is the North Carolina Railroad Curve Improvement Program. And so passenger service was established in, I'm going to say the Carolinian started in 1990, and the Piedmont service started in 1995. Well, when that service started, it took over 4 hours to ride a train from Charlotte to Raleigh. If it takes over 4 hours to ride the train, are you going to ride the train? No. So the wisdom, and I call it wisdom, of some of the predecessors and some of the leaders at the time, both at North Carolina Railroad and with the Rail Division, took an incremental approach, and they said, hey, let's get in here and let's make some curve improvements and improve the speed of the railroad such that the trains can travel faster. And the desired speed was 79 miles an hour. So a whole list, looked over the geometry of the railroad between Charlotte and Raleigh. There was the focus between Charlotte and Raleigh. It's 172 miles. And with that focus, they looked at those curves, and a lot of curves were 20 mile an hour, 40 mile an hour, 60 mile an hour curves. And that's the reason it took over 4 hours to get, to travel the 172 miles. So, so those investments over time, now the trains, the Carolinian and the Piedmont, can travel between Charlotte and Raleigh in 3 hours and 17 minutes. And the desire is to get it under 3 hours. And so that makes it more attractive as a mode of transportation. Let me hit a couple of more items here, and then I'll start into the slides. So the second big investment was, and you probably heard about this, Piedmont Improvement Program. $525 million worth of ARRA funds were allocated in 2009 to the NCDOT Rail Division. And so there was a whole program set up of projects. It was 40 or 50 some odd projects that actually double tracked the main line between Charlotte and Greensboro. There was 26 miles at that time that, and I could go back in time, and Southern Railway, it was double track between Charlotte and Greensboro, and then in the 60s they went and removed a bunch of double track, and it made it single track railroad with sidings. So as a result of that, it limited the capacity of the railroad at the time. And so the PIP program, there was 26 miles, identified 3 projects to double track the main line, and then also curve improvements, and then passing sidings as well on the NC line. So that was, like I say, just between 2009 and 2017. So the program manager, the program manager for the PIP program claims it was $525 million. They claimed they were, in 2017, it was under budget. It came within $3 of the 525. So, that's what a great program manager that was. So, but no, they did a great job with that program. And what it did is double tracked the main line. So I need to go back and explain. Our railroad is broken into 3 segments, basically 3 different lines. The main line is what we call the old Southern Main, or I call it the old Southern Main. A lot of people don't know what that means anymore. But the current NS folks call it the Piedmont Main, or the old Piedmont Main. It's double track between Greensboro and Charlotte. And then there's the NC line, which I used to call the H line. It used to have a prefix of H, but it was designated NC line about 4 years ago. And that's single track with passing sidings. And that's the line, the portion of it that comes through Burlington. And so that's the focus of the program that I'm going to share with you in a few minutes. And then the EC line is Goldsboro to Morehead City. That's the line we merged with back in 1989. So when you hear about 3 different segments, there's 317 miles. There's the main line, the NC line, and the EC line. Those are the different parts of the North Carolina Railroad. So let me actually show you a map. Can y'all see that? So it's important to understand the railroads in North Carolina, so to be able to understand why we want to invest in this segment of the North Carolina Railroad. So again, the green line is North Carolina Railroad, 317 miles. Morehead City to Goldsboro, and then Goldsboro through Raleigh over to Greensboro, and then down to Charlotte. And the other lines on here, Norfolk Southern and CSX, are shown represented here, but Norfolk Southern's main line, the old Southern Main or the old Piedmont Main, is North Carolina Railroad, and that's strategically for NS. That's really their line that they'd like to. It's more strategic for them than the rest of North Carolina Railroad. And then CSX, their A line runs from. It runs basically parallel, but these 2 lines run up and down the East Coast, and that's why they're significant. And but the NC line, Greensboro to Raleigh, we're investing in that. And these projects, this CRISI grant that we got in the CAPPFI program, invests in that segment that basically connects the old Southern Main with Raleigh, and then ultimately the CSXA line. Go the right direction here. So this is a little bit clearer map that's showing, like I say, the Norfolk Southern, old Piedmont Main between Charlotte and Greensboro is North Carolina Railroad. But north of Greensboro, the line goes to destinations New York, New Jersey, in the Northeast. And that's why it's strategic for Southern. from Charlotte south, it goes to Atlanta and on to New Orleans. And so y'all have heard of the Crescent, the Southern Crescent. That's New York to New Orleans. That's part of that long distance Amtrak train runs that line. CSX is in gray here, and it basically we don't think that much of CSX, so it's more important that I emphasize Norfolk Southern. So CSX is gray, but Fayetteville, Selma, Wilson, Rocky Mount, and points north, that's the CSX-A line, and it's strategic in the sense it goes down to Florida, and then it also connects up Baltimore, New York, New Jersey, in that area. So what we're focusing on now and partnering with NCDOT and with Norfolk Southern is between Greensboro and Raleigh is our CAPPFI program, Carolinian and Piedmont investment program, and we're going to spend $170 million in the next 5 years to make the line more robust between Greensboro and Raleigh. So this is Carolina and Piedmont passenger and freight improvements. It's funny, we struggled with an acronym for this. We wanted something, Piedmont Improvement Program, $525 million. It was improvements in the line between Charlotte and Raleigh to help with the Piedmont passenger service. That was PIP. Everybody just rolled right off the tongue. So we came up with CAPPFI, and I don't know, we'll get there. We'll get there. But the significance of CAPPFI is, in my mind, and in North Carolina railroads, is that over the past 30 years, NCDOT Rail Division, Norfolk Southern, CSX, all of those stakeholders took the lead and invested in the corridor. This is one of the first programs, really, where North Carolina Railroad, we went after the grant ourselves with the support of NCDOT Rail Division, with the support of Norfolk Southern, and we won this $170 million grant. And without those stakeholders as part of the team, that we wouldn't have been able to do that. So we're excited about the investments that are coming. CRISI is the program. It's Consolidated Rail, Infrastructure and Safety Improvements. It was a combined program from 2023 and 2024. We'd actually gone after a grant in 2022, but we didn't win that one. So I'm a strong believer that if you apply for a grant, you really don't win the first one. That FRA is like, well, that's a good try. But, we came back the second time, and we can win the second time around. But there's a lot of information here about it, but basically it's a $170 million grant program. We, with Norfolk Southern and with NCDOT Rail Division, put up a match of almost $65 million in projects, and I'll talk about those projects in a minute. So our grant was actually $105 million, and we matched it with about $65 million, and that's like really strong grant application. Typically, what happens is the applicant will match about 20%, and we felt like we needed to put up more capital than that. So North Carolina Railroad, we put some money in. Norfolk Southern actually put some money in. That really is working well. And then NCDOT leveraged one of the grade separation projects in Durham County, worth about $35 million to match to help with the match. So we won the grant in October of 24. Typically, it takes a year or two to get obligation. And without going into all the really boring details, we got the grant in 2024, but to start spending the money and actually doing the work, we have to get the grant agreements put in place with FRA. And in order to do that, we get to what we call obligation. And so we are, at this point, without jinxing it, we're literally one signature away from obligation with this grant. And once we get that, we'll be able to start getting the projects done. We'll go to design. Some of them are track 2 projects, which they're in project development. They need to be designed. And some of them are in track 3, which the design is done, and we're going to go to construction. So it's you're going to see some changes between Greensboro and Raleigh on the North Carolina Railroad in the next 5 years, and it's going to be pretty significant. So the program components, these are the 7 projects. The first one is rail replacement. This is probably the one I'm most excited about at this point, because part of the program is we're scheduled to replace 69 track miles of rail between Greensboro and Raleigh in the next 2 years. And Norfolk Southern has committed to bring, and nobody talks about the number of rail trains, but they're going to bring rail trains with brand new rail, lay it out between Greensboro and Raleigh, and replace all that rail in 2 years' time. There's 81 miles between Greensboro and Raleigh. So Greensboro's at the 0 mile post and Raleigh Union Station's at the 81. So 69 of those 81 miles is going to be brand new rail when we're done in the next 2 years. So if you can imagine, that doesn't mean a whole lot. If you can imagine 9 rail trains coming and dropping rail along the corridor in order to replace all that rail, and there'll be what they can't call them gangs anymore, but it's the program teams that come and actually do the work. And so it'll be kind of painful because part of the process is you have to close crossings and close them contiguously, and then at the same time there has to be passenger service that's annulled because those teams have to work during the day. So it's but that's exciting in the sense that nine fully loaded rail trains are going to show up at any given time over the next 2 years in order to replace 69 track miles of rail between Greensboro and Raleigh. The next project is what I call a siding extension, but this will get into a philosophical disagreement over double track versus siding extension. The siding extension is a 4.5 mile long siding, and actually pictured there is the Crabtree Creek Bridge in Morrisville. The Nelson to Clegg, and I guess I gotta apologize, I'm talking in terms of control points on the railroad. So when I say Nelson and Clegg, I'm talking about places where it goes from single track to double track, or not, well, here I am saying it. It goes from single track with the siding to just single track. So Nelson to Clegg is actually a siding that's about 3 miles long between Durham and Morrisville. So I don't know if you're not familiar with the railroad, when I talk about sidings and control points, it might as well be in Nebraska. But basically, do what? And it will be. And it will be. Yeah, here in about 2 years we will be. No. Wow, that Freudian slip there with Nebraska. No, but the siding extension is going to come east from the existing siding that's between Durham and Morrisville, and we're going to try to get as close as we can to Cary Station with this siding extension. So we'll have about 8 miles of a siding that some folks will call double track. And so what that's going to allow is for 2 passenger trains to hopefully meet on the fly, as opposed to 1 passenger train having to wait for one to show up at the siding and be able to pass. So that's, and what we're doing is we're taking advantage of the picture here at Crabtree Creek. There's roadbed already built for the second track for the siding. And so we're going to take advantage of about 5 miles of roadbed that was built with our Piedmont Improvement Program projects. One of those was Morrisville Parkway grade separation that's just around the curve from this photo. So we're excited to be able to build on something that we built just 10 years ago and add to that. So another piece of it is hopefully we're going to extend that all the way into Cary and get to Fettner, which is the next control point, and be able to have that siding go all the way through the Cary station. That means we're going to have to tear up a platform in Cary, but that's a whole nother story. The grade separation is the NCDOT contribution. Cornwallis Road, y'all know where Cornwallis Road is in Durham, the grade crossing there. That's a current grade crossing that's heavily traveled, a lot of traffic in RTP, and DOT has had that project on their books for about 10 or 15 years, and so they said, let's take that project and use it as a match, and so we're doing that, and so that project's going to be one of the first ones as well. They're going to actually let that project to go to construction, hopefully this month, but at this point it's probably going to be next month or maybe even January, and that'll go to construction, and that'll close the crossing at Cornwallis Road, and there'll be a roadway over the railroad there. We're trying to leverage also a little bit of additional grant funding to flatten out or straighten out that curve, so that curve under the new bridge will be a 79 mile an hour curve as opposed to a 70 mile an hour curve. So it's those kind of things that we're working on. Curve improvements, that's one of them. And then another, the bigger curve improvement is in Hillsboro. We've got a 40 mile an hour curve at the 42 NC that's near where the Hillsboro station is going to be. If Hillsboro gets a station, that's That's another one of the stations that's not a part of this program. But we're going to do a curve improvement there. And then in the infinite wisdom of trying to put more sidings in place, the remnant piece of track that's left after the curve improvement's done was going to be a single-ended siding that serves one freight customer. And DOT and us, we got talking. And so we're going to actually double end that remnant piece of track and actually have a short siding, like a quarter-mile or half-a-mile long siding, where two passenger trains could theoretically and operationally meet. And that way a train won't have to sit in Durham and wait for another passenger train to come. They can go 13 miles to the 42, and that will reduce delays. And another short siding will actually be closer to home here in Elon. We're talking about building a short siding at the 18NC, which is just east of the crossings at Elon. So help me with road names. There's the pedestrian tunnel in Elon, and then there's the crossing east of the pedestrian tunnel. What?
That's west.
That's west.
Williamson
What?
is the main, it's the center one.
Okay, so just east of that crossing will be a turnout for a short siding that'll go around the curve, and that is at York Road or Yorkmont, or that's the next crossing. It'll go through that crossing, and then it'll hopefully tie into the rail customer that's east of there before you get to the Webb Road Bridge, and then that short siding will be put in there. So ideally, so the Durham local can come from Durham and be, put in the siding while the passenger trains can pass. But it'd be long enough too for two passenger trains to meet. So that's another short siding that's in there. We've also got
You're going to have to recenter that track though, right? That one that's there, you're going to have to move it, or is there enough room to pull the new track in without having to change the alignment of the present track?
So we hadn't got that far along in the design, but that's a good question. If the curve speed limits the speed of the train below 79 miles an hour, then we'll take every opportunity to look at the alignment so we can improve that speed. So yeah, but that's a great question. That's a part of the scope of all the projects. And that gets into corridor study. That we generally is talking about corridor studies here. We're going to study, we got a little bit of money in there to study the clearances on the entire 317 miles, but also 3 rail bridges we're looking at those. Back Creek in Alamance County, which is just east of Haw River, and then Eno River and West Eno River bridges. All 3 of those have been identified as, they're safe. Believe me, they're safe, but they need a little attention, need some work. And so we're going to look at studying those so that we can possibly invest in those. But there's 7 project components. I know there's 6 bullet points there, but the 2 short sidings make up 6 and 7 along with the corridor study. But there's going to be some tremendous changes coming in the next 5 years. Why do we do this? Why do we invest in the NCRR corridor? It's mainly for the passenger service, in the sense that there are currently 8 daily Amtrak trains from Raleigh and Greensboro, and then 2 Amtrak, I say Amtrak trains, there's 8 Piedmonts and 2 Carolinians. So currently running, so 5 frequencies. And what we want to do is be able to support the infrastructure to support a 6th frequency, and maybe even more after that. So that's really the desired outcome. I mean, there's other the other basic tenets of the grant are, support of national defense. East of Raleigh, obviously the military support. You got Cherry Point, Camp Lejeune. You got the jet fuel transload or transfer station there at Goldsboro that pipes the jet fuel over to Seymour Johnson. Then short lines, we want to support basically the rail industry all in the eastern part of the state. Well, all over the state, but this connection between Greensboro and Raleigh will be making this line more robust and being able to support a lot of the short lines. And then we're talking to the NC Ports and talking about some projects outside of this grant where we can talk about supporting Morehead City and Wilmington. Morehead City is more of a break bulk port. It's not containers and dimensional loads. I don't know, have y'all seen the locomotives that are at Pomona, like in Greensboro, and will go on flat cars or actually be transported to Morehead City to go overseas.
They're usually wrapped.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. You can't really see the details of them, but those type of dimensional loads and that kind of thing is Morehead City is good port for that. So the high tech corridor, we talk about all the universities that are along the corridor between Raleigh and Greensboro, and then we through programs in North Carolina Railroad with NCRR Invest and Build Ready sites and our economic development programs, we're in support of a lot of industrial development and that kind of thing. So we're excited about the projects. I don't have pictures of them yet because they're not built, but hopefully in a few years we'll have a bunch of pictures and we'll be able to show these projects being built. So like I say, it's a 3 to 5 year construction process. The rail replacement and the grade separation will be the first projects you see. We actually have to complete the designs on the Hillsborough curve improvement and the 2 short sidings. And then the what I call the Clegg to Cary longer siding. That's got some concepts in it, but we got to get through the design process there. One thing we're excited about is NCRR is able to provide track protection now, and what track protection is, I was talking earlier about, is railroad flagging. Whenever a contractor or an engineer or surveyor is working in the railroad corridor or on railroad property, you typically have to have a railroad flagger, and what the flagger does is it keeps the contractor away from trains or keeps trains away from the contractor. And that's those have to be qualified folks that know operating rules and know all about the railroad environment. North Carolina Railroad, we have 25 qualified flaggers now, and we're flagging anywhere on Norfolk Southern. We actually, it's a story I like to tell because we were taking, well, Norfolk Southern contract flaggers were taking 6 to 9 months to get flaggers, so you had to schedule delays of, up to a year at some time to get a flagger to actually start construction on a project. And so I was thinking one day, a couple of us were thinking about, hey, we own our corridor, and while we don't operate or maintain, why can't we just have flaggers on our corridor on the 317 miles? If I had 2 or 3 flaggers that were dedicated to do that kind of work, then we would, help expedite the project process. So I've got a couple of employees that are former Norfolk Southern, and we got thinking about it, put together a safety program, talked to FRA, we talked about insurance. We always have to talk about insurance. Talked about, what the risk would be. Went to Norfolk Southern and presented that idea to them. And the next thing I know, they're calling me back and saying, hey, you guys put together such a great program. We're going to put your name on the NS website. You can flag anywhere on Norfolk Southern. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's 22,000 miles. And they're like, I told them, I said, well, I've only got 2 flaggers. And they said, not my problem. So, but it's been
Are they NC Railroad employees, or under railroad retirement?
So yes and no. We actually have contract employees or contractors, and then we also have North Carolina Railroad employees. So we find that, and if you know any qualified flaggers that are looking for work or anything, please have them talk to us, because we're looking for qualified flaggers, and we'll actually train you. If you want to be a flagger, able to do it, then we'll train you as well. But that's been one of the greater success stories that we found is we've got people working in 11 states now, and it's amazing that it's such a need. But we plan to provide our own track protection for these projects here in the next 3 to 5 years. And then I have to emphasize too that the scope of work and all that responsibility, the key takeaway here is that this is it's a coordinated effort between North Carolina Railroad, Norfolk Southern, NCDOT Rail Division. It takes an army. It takes everybody to get this done, and we're excited about it happening. So that's all I've got really. So if everybody wants to go to work, I got about $170 million worth of engineering work to do. So be glad to sign you up. But I appreciate the opportunity to share this. And I'll be glad to take questions.
Donald, how is, when this project is completed in 2030, how will that affect operating time for passenger trains between Greensboro and Raleigh? Will they quicken the trains up a bit?
That's the desired outcome. So We haven't actually measured that, and typically if we have, like with the PIP program, there was a lot of RTC modeling done. So all the folks got on their computers and did the RTC modeling is actually running the trains, simulating the operations. And out of that PIP program came what they call a Definitive Services Operating Agreement, DSOA. We say it all the time. And that agreement's in place. And so Norfolk Southern, Amtrak, and DOT work more closely together. We're the owner of the corridor, so we're not as involved, but we're getting there. We're getting a little more involved. But they have a threshold of on-time performance that they have to meet. And if they can't meet that, and if it's an infrastructure need that's causing that problem, then we have to go back to the table and say, where can we invest the dollars in order to be able to meet that on-time performance need? And so this will support that. And the desire of this is to hopefully get a 6 frequency out of it between Greensboro and Raleigh, but nothing's in writing or nothing's committed for it. So, but yes, that is the desired outcome, is to improve the operational fluidity of the railroad such that those on-time performance, that criteria is met. So it's a great question.
How is the current ridership?
I don't know the exact numbers, but I've heard it's record ridership. I've seen, I
One of
think
the strongest corridors in the country.
it is. And I want to say, I'm thinking it's like over 700,000 a year. I've seen numbers that over 500,000 or, get to or exceeding 700,000.
Well, October was their highest month ever.
Exactly. So it's really good program. It's interesting because people always say that Derek went the passenger train. I can't see anybody in there. I'm like, well, they're having record ridership, so yeah, exactly. Yeah.
On the rail replacement, I have a two-part question. One
Yeah.
is, how does that impact timetables and operations? And secondly, where's it going to start? Is it going to start at Greensboro, going to Raleigh?
So I don't know the answer to the second question because they keep changing their mind. So, no, so there have to be outages. And so what they typically can do, the team can actually typically do about 1 mile or 2 of track in a day, or in a week they can do 4 to 6 miles of track. When they did, and I'm going off my experience with this, we had some rail replacement done down east at Havelock about 5 years ago. That's what they call dark territory. There's no passenger service. There's not nearly as many freight trains. And they got 14 miles done in 2 weeks, no problem. Well, a lot less travel, fewer interference, passenger trains, whatever. So yes, it'll take outages. There'll be passenger trains that have to be annulled during the day. All that has to be planned. And then the team will come in and work on a weekly basis, typically Monday through Thursday type of time frame. And it'll be 10, 12-hour days, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, crossings will have to be closed, and it'll all have to be coordinated in advance. So the latest that I've heard is they're going to start in Greensboro and work their way east. And that's doing half of it 1 year and half of it the next year. So they were supposed to do part in this year in 25 and part in 26. Now it's first half in 26 and second half in 27. So I don't know if that answers the question or not,
Well,
but it's.
I have another one. So when you say crossings will be closed, what does that mean?
So when the rail, each piece of rail, and that's why I say the rail trains, each piece of rail is a 1/4 mile long. Each piece is like 13 or 1,400 feet long. So when the rail train shows up with these 1/4 mile long sticks of rail, then the train has to actually, they'll stop the train, they'll actually strap it or cable it up and tie it down, pull the train, and the rail comes off the train and lays beside the track, outside the track. There's a whole process for this. It's like an assembly line process. And so that's like a couple of weeks or a month ahead of when the actual team will come in to actually replace the rail. So the rail will lay beside the track, the new rail will lay beside the track for weeks ahead of the actual operation. And so when it goes across a road crossing, they actually have to cut a slot in the asphalt and bury the rail with, and then put temporary, cold patch or some kind of asphalt patch over it temporarily. And then when they come back to actually replace it, they'll pull that rail in to the heads of the ties, and then take the old rail up and put it on a narrow gauge, put the new rail in on the standard gauge, and it's again a whole assembly line process that it's fascinating. That's a whole nother presentation in itself. But yeah, that's so crossings have to be closed intermittently for short periods of time in order to get the material across and then get the replacement done.
Had a friend ask a question, when there's a curve, how do you get the curve in the rail? It's not formed with the curve.
That's correct.
How do you do that?
So rail actually, in that cross section, rail is actually flexible. So yeah, it actually will flex to that curve. Now, if you're gonna bend it to a curve that's like in a street, like a trolley or a street running type rail, then yeah, it actually has to be bent to conform to that radius. But when you're talking about 1 to 10 to 12 degree curves, the curves are so flat that the rail will actually flex with it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty
So
resilient.
you get some of it nailed down and pull it along.
Yeah, well, it's all in the process. So, the quarter mile long piece, they'll actually hook it up. It'll be on the train and it'll be, strung through, 30, 40 cars,
Yeah.
flat cars that are permanently, coupled together. And so when they'll actually like have the bolt holes in the end of the rail and they'll actually cable it, and then the train will move and they'll actually tie the rail down, the cable to the end, to a cross tie or to the track, to the crib and that kind of, and they'll pull the train will move, but the rail will come off. They actually have rail pulling machines as well, so that's on the end of the cars.
Okay.
So yeah, but yeah,
Thanks.
it is flexible in that, especially in that axis. Not so much in the vertical, but the horizontal.
So where will the rail trains originate from? I mean, who provides the rail?
So there's 2 plants now that provide rail. Of course, with the grant, it has to be American sourced. The material has to be American sourced and the rail American made. So there's 2 plants that I'm aware of, one in Ohio and then one in Colorado. But Norfolk Southern will get the rail. They're the ones that actually have the ability to get the best price. I don't think the little old North Carolina Railroad would get the best price on some rail. So Norfolk Southern, with their buying power, will actually acquire the rail. They are actually contributing $13 million. They're going to write a check for $13 million to the grant as part of the match that I was talking about. So that's part of the buying power of the large organization. And so they actually buy the rail and will bring it and deliver it to the corridor.
So, Donald, 2 questions. Is it NS doing the work?
Yes.
They are.
So the rail replacement, NS will be doing the work. Yes.
And since it's such a large corridor that you're replacing, is it just gonna be one team? Why not work on it from both ends?
They have 20,000 miles and they don't have that many. They have all their resources distributed over their whole system. So yeah, they've dedicated, they'll have one team to come do it. And it'll be over weeks at a time. So, yeah, I don't know. It may be, they haven't said no. It may be that 2 of those rail teams could come at one time. But they have a lot of work to do over all over
Because you would
22
think, you would
states.
think that they would, since they're a doubling track, you might as well get as many people on it as you could.
So how can I say this? I don't know if I could say this, Will. The NC line is not as strategic in that regard as the main line. If this was a mainline operation, then there may be more discussion about that. But yeah, and they're annulling passenger trains, not freight trains. So not as,
Yeah, that's important.
that's right.
And so this arrangement with Norfolk Southern is going to stay in place regardless of the merger with UP, is that right? I mean,
That's
so
our
there are
expectation.
guarantees in place that
That's our
UP
expectation.
merger is
That's
not
right.
somehow going to.
That's right. That's right. That's our expectation. There are agreements in place where we will, the work, that's what this master project construction agreement will be, is that the agreement will spell out the procedures and how things will come together. So, yeah.
Regardless.
Well, there's no guarantees, but yes, we would like for that work to get done as quickly as possible so that we don't have that opportunity for maybe something to come along and maybe,
My guess is that Union Pacific will be very, very agreeable to doing whatever they can to get the support of the state of North Carolina.
I would think so. I
Yeah.
would think so.
I don't have no reason for anything, I don't have a leg to stand on to tell you that this is so, but I am so surprised that they have done as much as they've done on the line between Old Fort and Asheville.
Yeah, that's
You know,
right.
I really expected that to go back as a dark railroad. The signals are coming back.
Right, right.
You know, we can speculate all day long, but if I was Union Pacific, I was gonna, you know, I would think, I'm sure that somebody in their strategic plan, department knows that North Carolina is really interested in reestablishing passenger service to Asheville. I would think there's no reason for them to do all the signal work in that if somebody's not looking at passenger service
That's right.
for the long term. So
Long-term
that's why
investment.
I'm bullish about that, so.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that the argument that we would have is that NS is putting $13 million in toward the rail replacement, and we're getting $69 million worth of work done. So there's a pretty good return on investment for that amount of work that's being invested. The grant money is it's
When
a good
does the
investment.
current lease on the line end with NS?
So right now it's a 45-year term from 1999 to 2044.
Twenty forty-four.
Yeah.
How much money do they pay out each year back to the state for their lease of the line? Is it
Two.
16 million or something like that?
Somewhere I honestly don't.
I thought that's what I'd heard.
Yeah, it's something that's probably not far off from that. Yeah, that's not something I'm usually aware of. So,
The rail that they take out, now that's Norfolk Southern's rail, right?
it'll actually be the project's rail. So that's another thing we're looking at. If we've got older rail that like down in the eastern part of the state, we've got between Havelock and Morehead City, we've got about 20 miles of track that's 100-pound non-controlled pooled rail. So all the rail that's coming out is 132 to 136 pound rail, which is not great, but it's a lot more typical, a lot more renewable than this 100-pound non-controlled cooled rail down in Havelock. So we'll have to have some discussions about where that rail is going or where we get credit for that. But yeah,
I guess there are a lot of short lines who could benefit from that too.
there's a lot. A good part of this rail is in pretty good shape. A lot of it's not so good. So that's the reason we wanted to focus on getting the 69 miles, because the difference between the 81 and the 69 miles, all that rail was actually replaced with the Piedmont Improvement Program. There's the Hall River project. There was this Morrisville Parkway grade separation that was done. A lot of rail was renewed at that point. It's just 10 years old and been in service, not that long. So we're really trying to take advantage of that and just really make the whole corridor, the whole 81 miles, a lot more robust.
That weight, what length does that cover?
Oh, good question. Sorry, I just ramble on with terminology. 136 pound rail is 136 pounds for every 3 feet of rail. So it's 136 pounds per yard. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, that's a great question. Sorry, that's yeah, and it's.
So you'll be able to support the big boy.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
That's what they say. So yeah, it's I guess what got it back when the Challenger came to Kingsport, I was trying to think it was a horizontal curvature in some places. So
Yeah, the Y.
That's right.
The tender, rigid tender
Yeah.
wouldn't go around the Y.
exactly. So,
I was there, saw it on the ground.
oh wow, saw video of it. So it was good. But,
I have another related question here.
Sure.
Goldsboro, Selma to Goldsboro. What kind of condition is that in right now? Is any part of that good for 60 or 79 miles an hour?
It is.
Okay.
It is. In fact, NS just did their rail replacement, their dual rail team 2 years ago. So 7 miles of that stretch is brand new rail, and so yeah, it's in pretty good shape. Yeah. It's dark territory.
Okay,
East
it's dark territory.
East of Selma is
Okay.
dark territory. Yeah. So there's no signals.
So if we start looking at service to Wilmington using Norfolk Southern from Selma to Goldsboro, CSX from Goldsboro to Wallace, and then NCDOT owns Wallace to Castle Hayne.
Castle Hayne,
or the
connect the
river.
dots there. That's right. That's right. So they would have to do something there. That'd be interesting segment, Wallace to Castle Hayne, because it's been out of service how long, and just the rail bridges themselves of the whole corridor, they just would have to be redone.
Is there rail beyond east of Wallace?
I don't
No.
know.
I don't
That's a
know.
good question. I don't think it's
There's no
There's
real-
completely,
there.
nothing there at all. Yeah.
And it's
So,
been gone since 1986.
wow. So yeah, that's
There's nothing there after the caboose in Wallace.
No.
right.
That's right. The swing drawbridge is still there.
Bridge is still
North
there.
Cape Fear River,
Right. Right.
but who
But-
knows whether it works anymore.
It's a good question. Good question.
I have a question. As far as NCR has a lot of real estate ownings along the line.
Mhm.
How much money do you reap from those investments along the line? It goes back into the company.
Yeah, it's, so the real estate side of it, we have agreements, well, it's actually, we're looking for, we have agreements with adjacent property owners, but, you know, we just hold on to a lot of that property, so it's not, I mean, it's not as, I guess, as what it would appear to be. But yeah, we have some holdings for sure.
What is the, I know the ownership of the line from Glen down to Carborough. Doesn't the state have a small portion of the ownership of that line? I know it's not owned by the state, but
Right, right, yeah, the University Railroad's what they call it, the J line is what it is, but yeah, there's, NS owns part of it. I believe the state actually has some ownership, and NCRR actually has a small, I think we have actually one seat on the board or something of that nature, so. But, I've heard discussion about it, possibly been talking about, multi-use trails and some type of commuter ideas there. I don't know. It's be interesting to see. I don't know if there's just one customer down there now, one or two.
the big one is UNC.
Yeah,
UNC is huge.
yeah.
They
So
bring in
they're still getting coal down
lime
there?
and coal,
Yeah,
and then I think southern states occasionally will get, cars. but-
right, right.
The freight opportunities in Alamance County is Mebane.
Right. That's
Mebane
right.
is- Hats off to Mebane because they've really tried to, expand the rail footprint in the Mebane.
Right,
area.
exactly. We actually, one of our NCRR Invest opportunities back in 2015 was that Cambro site. Cambro, where the plastics, where they make the plastic lids for some type of container. And so that siding in there at the 30 NC that comes in. And then I think there's been like a transload built there in the past couple of years. So yeah, it's growing. That's another location I'd love to, and then after 5 years from now, is look at relocation with the Back Creek Bridge and doing some line straightening. The line just meanders a good bit through there. I'd love to do a line straightening project in there and increase the track speeds to 79. And on that opportunity, replace Back Creek Bridge, maybe even, I don't say Hall River, but think about Hall River Bridge, Back Creek, and get into Mebane and do some straightening in there. But that's gonna be some significant property acquisition and relocation. The challenge is getting up over the ridge between Hall River and Back Creek. The topography is there and you've gotta climb up and come back down again. So back in the 1850s, they just, path of least resistance. So nowadays, they've got the ability to straighten it out and maybe, improve the profile a little bit, but that would be some significant property acquisition and relocation. So,
Is Winston-Salem anywhere in the North Carolina passenger train plan?
I've heard it is, but I haven't heard that lately. So there are 5 station projects that are on the books that are on the NCRR, at least in our purview at this point, but Lexington is one. And that they've got a build grant, but their clock runs out in 2027 and they hadn't even started construction. Salisbury and Kannapolis, I put those two paired together. They're existing stations, but there's only a platform on one side of the double track. So the project is to put another platform on the other side so that you can have a stop on either main track. Those two go together. In fact, North Carolina Railroad, we would match. We are going to give up to $5 million toward track work for those two projects if they would be done at the same time. And that's the agreement right now. DOT is willing to do them at the same time and put them in service at the same time. And if we do that, then North Carolina Railroad is going to pay $5 million or up to $5 million for the track work components of those two projects. The fourth one is Harrisburg. That's a new station that's down near Charlotte. And that, we've actually put together a design for the station. It's very similar to Kannapolis, low-level platforms, one on each side of the double-track main. But insurance and indemnification and actually getting Amtrak to agree to stop trains in Harrisburg is the next hurdle we gotta work out. And then the fifth one is Hillsboro. I think I'd mentioned that one earlier. With our curve improvement project, Hillsboro has actually acquired property. They're actually in the design stages of putting together a building that would be a station. There would be a single platform along the single track, and it's spaced accordingly. Durham's at the 55, Hillsboro would be at the 42, Burlington at the 21. So it's good spacing as far as passenger service goes. Of course, I don't know anything about passenger service, so I can't really say that officially. But that's, and that seems to be the consensus of where these 5 stations and those projects would go. But it's a challenge to indemnify the railroad and also have the insurance coverage for, making sure that with that infrastructure for people being in the railroad corridor, you don't want people getting hit by freight trains or passenger trains or anything, so. But that's another thing we're working on or trying to work with the rail division and with Norfolk Southern.
Your crossover at Selma with CSX, is that an impediment for future growth because of the heavy CSX traffic and trains getting held up?
It could be. I mean, it could be a delay there, but it seems to be working well now. It's I don't know that it would warrant any kind of grade separation or anything, but it's interesting to see that diamond. It's the 2 diamonds there, the CSX double track and the single track for us. It's actually CSX has to maintain it, so it's on them right now. But yeah, that is a good thing. Likewise at Boylan and Raleigh, there's actually with the Raleigh Union Station tracks coming in, there's 5 diamonds there, so that. Something has to be considered when improvements are considered in Raleigh. So.
Anything else? Well, now this has been a great talk. Thank you.
I appreciate y'all. Thank you. Spend some time with you.
And I'll be interested in hearing your January talk about putting switches in.